All right, so I'm recording. Okay. All right, so as I said, we finished the competition. We are wrapping up this topic of the semester, right, which was regression models. Seen quite a bit of you've learned how to create PyTorch models. We saw regression trees. You saw that you learned one very valuable lesson, that just because it says deep learning doesn't mean that it's the best thing, right? You got to really think about the problem, as there may be other tools, simple regression trees, advanced regression trees such as XGBoost, etc. All right, so we saw that. We just have to wrap up that lecture. I'll do that next week. And then today, I'm going to do the last part of this, which we can continue this topic when we do classification and other things. All right, so today, basically, the topic is ONNX, the ONNX framework. So that should be very exciting. So if you remember, I had asked you guys to create your GitHub accounts, right? And you should have a GitHub account. So you will need that, not today necessarily, but as we are building this. So it'll take us however long it takes us, okay? So what are we doing is basically deploying models, okay? So onto GitHub, all right? So let's go ahead and get started. I have the Anaconda environment here. So I need you guys to remind me, what was the script that we were doing last? Was it this one, regression NN and XGBoost? Is that the one? It sounds like that was probably the one, I think. So I'm just going to do Jupyter Notebook and start with that one. So basically, you've trained models, right? And you did R-square and everything, right? And we have two types of models. Basically, the PyTorch model. So let's go ahead and click this. Okay, so we've got our PyTorch models, such as these, right? So these objects here, we instantiate the model by doing this, right? As you know. Then we do the training in the train loop, and then you've got a model. And then we know that we've got a model because we even evaluate it and it's able to predict, right? And once you do all of that, you run the R-square. It's not here. Okay. You run your scores and you get an R-square is like 0.40, right? So you know how well it performs, 0.40. And let's say that you want now to use this model. So how do you do that? You see what I'm saying? And so that's what this topic is about, right? So how do we take this PyTorch model, which is basically in this model, and deploy it to the web so that we can do some predictions of it? Make sense? Now, the other thing is you also did XGBoost, right? So you did XGBoost, you ran all the analysis, and then you printed the R-square, and I had 42, but you guys got higher values, right? And also there's sklearn, and you guys did regression trees, and you got in the 55 scores. So you got right there 3 models, right? And you just decide for whatever reason that you're going to deploy all 3. So what do we do? Do you see what I'm saying? Make sense? All right, so now, there's several ways that this is done. So in the past, for instance, TensorFlow has its own tools for deploying models, okay? But then Microsoft decided that they wanted, they're always competing against each other, basically, and they created something called ONNX, ONNX, right? And this framework allows you, it's more of it works with TensorFlow, it works with PyTorch, it works with sklearn, it works with XGBoost. So it's nice in that sense. And so we can use this framework, ONNX, to export our models and then build websites with them. Got it? So that's kind of what we're going to do. All right. So as you will see, deploying a model from PyTorch is very straightforward. Okay. And deploying a model from XGBoost is a little bit more work, or from sklearn, it's a little bit more work, but not too much work. Okay. Okay. So what we get, so now, once you've done that, what do you get? You basically get one file. all right, which will have an extension .onnx, all right? We're gonna get a file, a .onx file. And then what do? We're gonna build basically a website, okay? Now this, if you've taken a website class before, you're ahead of the game, right? So you know what, a website is made up of what? HTML, CSS, JavaScript. There you go. Those three things are all you need. And if you're like an expert in those three, you're like way ahead of everybody, right? Because that's really what we're going to be doing. And really the only thing that you have to learn is that we're going to have a new JavaScript library, like maybe you're familiar with jQuery or something like that. So we're going to need a specific one to deal with tensors. Because as you know, just like we did with NumPy, right? We have data, we need to convert it into a tensor and then feed it into our model. So that's really going to be the bulk of the work, is getting our data, converting it into a tensor, loading it into our model, and then predicting. Now here, remember, this is inference. So really, you can just predict one value. We're not evaluating R-square anymore or anything like that. That's already done in the Jupyter. This is just deploying our models. Got it? All right. Any questions so far? All right. So the other question is, where are we going to deploy it? So obviously, you could deploy it to your own server. You can install LAMP on your Linux machine, or the Windows version of that. But I think it's more exciting to just deploy it to the internet, right? And then, it works from anywhere in the world. You don't have to have hosting or anything like that, because GitHub provides a service called GitHub Pages, which should allow you to set up your own website, even with your own domain and everything, okay? So that's why I asked you guys to create a user account. We're going to be deploying our files there. So really, we'll deploy our files to GitHub. You'll create an index.html file, maybe your CSS if you want to, and your JavaScript, or you can just have it in one, although it's probably better to have the three, right? And then we're going to have our ONNX model in there, and that's it. Does that make sense? So it's going to be the HTML, the CSS, the JavaScript, and the ONNX model. The approach that I'm going to take for this problem, we're going to do the wine quality data, of course. So that has 11 inputs. So you're going to have 11 text boxes. You see that? You're going to enter the values, and that's it. Now, there's actually two. There's ONNX, and then there's the newer version of ONNX called ONNX Runtime, all right, ORT. I'm going to show you examples of both. So we're going to use ONNX for PyTorch and ONNX Runtime, or ORT, for XGBoost, right? And then I'll probably leave the an sklearn one for you as homework, okay? All right, and that's basically what we're going to be doing. Another way of deploying AI, I guess, to the web, and specifically to GitHub, is to use PyScript. But that's not what we're going to cover in this class. PyScript is more like if you were kind of coding Python in the browser. It's very nice, but that's not, if you're familiar with that, that's not what we're doing, right? Instead, we're just using the ONNX framework, okay, built by Microsoft. Okay, so you can see that here. So I'll start with the simplest scenario probably, which is to deploy the PyTorch models, to the web. Okay. All right. So let's proceed then. Let's go ahead. All right. So we assume that we have the model already trained. Okay. And so now we just have to invoke the model, and the model will have a function that allows us to export the file to our system. We just have to specify a few parameters. So I'm going to do the deployment actually before XGBoost. Let's see. So I have XGBoost here, and I'm just going to say here, deploy XGBoost model. Okay. And then here I'm going to have deploy PyTorch mod. So that should be this. Okay. All right, so let's make this a markdown. Okay. Hit run. Let me make sure I'm recording this. Yeah. Okay. All right, so do we need any libraries for this? Let's take a look. So for when we deploy sklearn and XGBoost, okay, with ORT, we will need ONNX ML tools and the converter and such things. But when we're using from PyTorch directly, there's no need to install libraries, okay? So it should be already built in. So let's go ahead then add the code for that. All right, and it should be model dot. So we want to set the model to eval mode. So it's no longer like in, for training. So we're going to set it to eval. And then basically we would do torch dot ONNX dot export. Okay. And we're going to need to set up some parameters here. Most of the parameters are pretty simple. But they have to do with the size of the inputs, the size of the tensor, etc., and the names. So let's do. So we're going to export, of course, the model itself, comma. Because remember, this is the model, right? Where the word model holds whichever model you train. So let's say, for instance, I instantiated DLNet, right? And I did all the training and testing. So that's the model I'm deploying. And it's called model. And so all I have to do is specify it here as model, basically. Got it? All right. Then we need to, one obvious thing we need to do is the name. So you can have a folder if you'd like. Just give it a name that's descriptive. I would say DL net wine data dot ONNX, like that. Okay, so that's the name of the file. Then we need to specify the input. So we are going to define a variable here after eval, call it dummy input. And I'm going to say torch.rand n 1, 11. Does this make sense? Now remember, the order is extremely important, right? So you're going to be collecting 11 values from 11 text boxes, and you need to add them into the vector the way that they would go, okay? So these are the 11 inputs for the wine quality data. Was it 11 that we had? Yeah, 11. All right. So then that dummy input file should go here. Dummy input, like that. Okay.
Why is it 1 by 11 instead of 11 by 1?
That's how it wants it. It's a row vector, basically.
Okay.
Yeah. So it's basically like this, and that's the input. Not like 11 samples, but one of 11 values. Got it? Yeah. All right. So that's basically the input, which is really what matters. The output, it already knows what it's going to output because it's already in the architecture of our model, which should be one value if this is correct. Okay. What else do we need? We may need to, once we are there, remember that this model is going to leave the Jupyter notebook entirely, right? And it's going to live on the web. So in the web, then we need to find ways of extracting the data by name and things like that. Okay, so we're going to say input values. And I'm just going to give it a name here. Input values, or input name, sorry, equal input one. Okay, and output names equal, and we can change this later, output one. Okay. All right, so these are the names that we can reference later. So we've added model, dummy input, the name of the file that we want. We can say verbose equal false, so it doesn't print out anything. And then we just add these input names and output names as reference. Input names equal input names and output names equal output names. And that should be it. So we're going to try it out in a second, and it should generate a file, right? Input names, output names. Okay. So this will become more obvious as we use it in the website. Okay, but that's basically it. That's the idea. And this should give us our ONNX model. Key thing is basically this. You really need to get this right? The vector of the inputs, and then the file, and so on. Any questions? All right, so once this is done, we can proceed to generate the file. So I'll probably need to run this again. Clear the kernel. Okay, hit run. Okay. Going. And, the performance doesn't really matter right now. You guys know how to get really good performance. So I leave that to you. Right now, all we want is the model to be deployed to the web. So our main focus is that part of the process. And this should be the training. Okay, so we do need a trained model, obviously, for this to work, right? So we're going to create this one. Did 500. Yeah, so it's gonna take a while. What?
I was just this. I can see this screen with it.
Oh, you can see it, yeah. Yeah, so if it finishes with for you guys on your computer, just let me know if it generates that file. Basically, you should get a .onix file. And that's literally it as far as like machine learning. After that, this class becomes a web development class, right? Because really we're gonna switch over to GitHub pages to build our model basically. Huh? It should be there in the folder. That's where I because if you notice the way that I have it set up, it just says at the file. It generated it? Okay, good. All right, so that would be your model, okay? This got an error?
It's not encoded.
What does it say? Did it give you an error in the code, you mean?
No, not in the code, but in that file, which is generated.
How do you know there's an error in the file? If
It's
there's
showing error.
in the file?
It's a binary file, it's not gonna be readable.
Are you trying to open it? Is that what you mean? Oh, you can't open
You can.
it. Oh, yeah. No, this is the model, right? So remember, this model needs to be efficient and fast, right? So they're obviously going to generate something that runs, a binary, etc. And obviously that's why you will need a JavaScript library to be able to manipulate, basically. But we need to deploy it to the web, okay? You wanted it to be bigger?
Yeah, kinda.
Kind of disappointed?
It's only 8 kilobytes.
Is it? Is it? Okay.
Well,
For a deep learning?
it's 2 kilobytes. I was expecting something bigger. And a bunch of
Okay.
weird unreadable characters.
Okay. I mean, it could be that it didn't generate correctly, but we would have to test it and see.
We only had 11 neurons to 11
Yeah.
neurons.
Yeah, it's not big.
I mean, I don't know. Honestly, I didn't look into the size of this part. All right, so where's my mine is training, right? 180. All right, I guess while mine is doing this, let's go ahead and talk about the other part, right? So let's assume that you guys, let's assume that you've created the file, your .onix file. Now what you want to do is you want to go to GitHub, right? And deploy it, right? So I'm going to have to open my GitHub here. Okay. So just go here. Then GitHub. Now I'm already logged in. Okay. I'm already logged in here. And I already have configured pages in my site, but you guys will have to configure it if you want to use it. So I assume everyone has an account. So I'm going to be using the PyTorch folder. And I think I have this deploy to production. Yeah, with ONNX frameworks. So that's what I will be using for deploying models. Okay. So basically here it's your knowledge of GitHub does not change. Okay. So that doesn't change at all. So you can just go ahead here and click on add file. I'm going to create a new file. And I'm going in deploy to production. I'm going to do the folder for this deployable website, right? Or model. So I'm going to just call it wine quality. Okay. And then I mean, this is how I do it. I mean, there may be better ways of doing this, but this is kind of my habit. So I just put a README in there. And then I'll say like deployed models for wine quality data. Okay. And then in here, we're going to deploy, of course, NNs, no, let's say PyTorch NNs. PyTorch NNs. And also we're gonna deploy XGBoost. Okay, at least. Okay, so that should be enough. You can commit changes. And that, don't pay attention to that, so it's there. Got it? Does this make sense, guys? Now in here, I mean, it's your preference. If you want to add multiple, like you want to do one for XGBoost, one for NNs, etc., right? But basically what you have to do here is to create your 3 files that you're going to need. Okay, so let's go ahead and do that. And like I said, this becomes basically now a web development. So the 3 file, this is your, if you already have your ONNX file, upload it here. Okay. Let me actually do this. So this is, I'm in deployed production, wine quality. So I'm going to create a new file. I'm going to separate these out. I think it's a better. So then this would be NNs, right? So that's the one that we're doing first. And so to create that folder, I'm going to add another readme.md. And then I'm just going to say deployed NN models with XGBoost. Oh, sorry, with ONNX. Got it? All right, so you can hit commit changes. And now here, if you go to deploy to production, go to wine quality, now you've got your NN folder, and then you can have your own XGBoost folder later when we deploy that one. So now here we're set, right? If you already have your ONNX file, load it here. And now the other 2 files that we're going to add are the index.html file, which is just an HTML file, and an index.js file. And that's kind of how I'm doing it. Okay. So I'm going to just create the files. So I'm going to say index.html. Okay, and I'm going to put in like HTML, right? At least like that. You see that? Just so we have some data in there for now, and you can commit changes. Okay, you've got your index page in there. Now let's add the index.js file. Index.js. Yep. And this one, it doesn't need to have scripts or anything. So instead, I'm just going to do the functions that we need in here. So basically one function. So usually I'm going to do something like async function run example. Okay. Now this should be pretty efficient. Oh, and let's add the curly bracket there. All right, and this is basically then the function that we're going to use. You can call it run example1 or run example. Think of this as a function that when you press a button, this function will run. Does that make sense? Yeah. Okay. Any questions? Everyone with me, guys? All right. So commit changes, basically. All right. That's it. So what do we have left to deploy our Torch model into ONNX? We have to set up GitHub pages so that it allows us to view these data, or these files as web pages, basically like a regular website on the internet. And then we need to fill in the data in index.html and index.js. And then you will have a website. Now, one thing that I recommend is once you get your link, just put it in the README. And that way you can just click on the link in the README and you get to your website. Okay, that's kind of how I like to do it. And that's basically it. All right, so basically, let's see if my my ONNX model ran, so I can load it. Okay, I think it finished, right? So now I'm gonna go ahead and run this one. Okay. And then it's 34. Like I said, it doesn't matter. You guys would just repeat this and deploy the model, obviously, that has the best R square for your task. Okay, so this is the moment. Okay, so it ran, okay? And you don't need to do the rest of the XGBoost today. We'll do it later, and then it's slightly a little bit different how we're going to deploy XGBoost because we're going to use ONNX runtime. Now, you can use ONNX runtime for this as well, okay? So I'm sure you can figure it out as you start to deploy these models, okay? All right. And in fact, ONNX runtime has one nice thing that you can also use it in the Jupyter notebook to read in the ONNX file and use it there. So that's something else that we can explore. But for now, I'm just trying to keep it simple and just doing this part. So now if I look at, so there's my file, right? You guys see? So this is the file that I'm going to upload to GitHub, okay? So I need to remember where this is located. So now I'm going to go over here and I'm going to, if you remember, I'm in PyTorch, deploy to production, wind quality, because that's what I'm doing, NN, because that's what I'm doing. I already have my 2 files in here. Now I'm just going to add my ONNX file. So I'm going to do upload files, choose your file, and then it's this one, right? So .ONNX. Okay. Okay, so we're making good progress, and this is basically the approach that we want to take. So now we're going to proceed to start defining our website, basically. This part, you guys, if I'm sure some of you are very good at web development, so I'm sure you could do better than me. I'm not super expert on this, so I'll just show you some of the basic ideas, okay? So we'll start with index.html, which is going to be laying out the text boxes. I do have a CSS that I kind of like to use, so I'm just going to copy paste it in, okay? I'm going to copy paste it in, and that way, actually, I'm just going to copy paste some code, so I don't have to type everything. All right, so I'm going to go to my GitHub. Another version of another tab of GitHub. Okay. And because I don't want to, the CSS is a lot of details. But really, it's, whatever your talent in CSS allows you to do, right? So it's, you can define whatever you want. Right, so you can go to this link here, right, in my GitHub and get basically these things so you don't have to type them up, okay? Does that make sense, guys? All right, so this is the path. Okay, so I'm gonna just grab index.html here and basically copy a few things that I need to use. So copy them. Because it's, it's a lot of code. for HTML. All right, so I'm going to go back now to where I'm deploying my wine quality data set. From that, wine quality, and now index HTML. If you remember, I had only put in the HTML tags here, right? Now I'm gonna just, I need to click on edit. So this little pencil, right? Click on edit, and so it's gonna let you to update it, and I'm gonna paste in that code so I don't have to type the whole thing. Now this is for something else I did, so I'm just gonna modify it a little bit, but I'll describe the things that I'm leaving in here. Any questions? Again, this is just web development, okay? So you guys, all right, so as you know, in a web page, we have HTML, we have the head section, the body section, right? So you can see here, we've got HTML, then we've got the head section, which starts right there, and it goes until there, okay? Yeah. And then after that, we've got the body section, which begins here and ends pretty much here, and then we close the HTML tag, okay? So let's focus on the head section and the things that you need to keep. So here, you're gonna do this part here, script. If you notice, this is like, if you're familiar with jQuery, etc., this is the library that we need to import into our website in order for us to interact with ONNX, okay? So if you notice, key thing is to see that it says ONNX min.js. Okay, so that's your ONNX JavaScript related library. Questions about that? Makes sense? All right, good. And then this one is just the JavaScript file that I added to this repo, which is going to have my function async run example one, which basically is the code that you're going to put in there. So we're separating out the static from the dynamic part. So this HTML basically should have the CSS and the text boxes and maybe a button or two, and that's it. Okay. So let's take a look. The style, I mean, it's just something I use all the time, like things that so you can just use this. It'll have like headers and all that. We can modify it later, so that's fine. Leave it. All right, the body section, as you can see, I have what? I have a heading F1. Oh, okay, so let's change this. So the heading for this one should be what? Wine quality NN, maybe? Now, another thing about GitHub pages is that it takes a while to update. Like what I mean by that is I may write this code, hit commit, right? But when I go to the link for the website, it's not updated yet. There's like a 10-minute lag is what I have found. Sometimes less, sometimes more, probably depending on usage, but it's about 10 minutes. So just, you're gonna have to wait 10 minutes, okay? All right, so I added this. Then after this, I have some divs, which is kind of how I know how to build websites. So I have, and as you can see, I have some text boxes already. And I have more text boxes over here. And so I have, what I need to do. I have boxes too. This is just what I copied. So well, I'm gonna leave this one. Get rid of this one. So I'm gonna get rid of this case 2. I have a button here. I'm gonna get rid of that. I'm gonna get rid of that. Okay. So I'm just, I copied something that's a little bit different. So I think I can get rid of this. But I do want to keep predictions, right? So that's kind of something I want to keep. Okay. Right, so the main idea in this website is I have text boxes, a button, but I also need to have something where I'm gonna display the results, okay? So those are the three things that we need to have in here. So maybe you guys can help me out if I've missed anything. So I've got. I have the button here, right? My function was called run example, so that's that. I opened this div here with not enough text boxes yet, so I probably need to close it, right? Okay, so this is, right, this div for the text boxes. You see that? Then I have this div for the buttons, right? Probably can get rid of this div. And then I have this div here. Let's see. And we can get rid of that. This one, I think. Right? Do I have enough closing and opening divs? I have div, this, opens and closes. Then I have a heading, and then I have this. Yeah. So I think we're good. All right. As you can see, three things, very simple. Don't expect this to be well formatted or anything at this stage. We're just trying to put in the basic structure that we need. Any questions? You guys can do much better. Okay. But so let's kind of summarize. The names don't matter. We can change them later. Let me do this div as a lowercase. Yeah. All right. So I'll repeat what goes in the HTML. The library that does the JavaScript. There it is. Do I? Where? Oh, this you mean? Yeah. Sorry. Yep. Is that what you meant, Lenny?
Yeah.
Yeah. Let me save this so I don't save. Okay. So it's saved, so that's good. Now we can open it. And so I'll repeat. We have the library for dealing with tensors in PyTorch and ONNX. We've got our JavaScript, which we have yet to define, right? That's where actually the coding is going to be new and different because it's specific to ONNX. We've got this style, which is the CSS. And then in the body, I just have a heading. Then I created this div. We can change the name later. We're going to need to reference things, obviously, in our code. But these are the text boxes. And we're going to need to define 11 text boxes, okay? Then I have a button over here, and that's going to be our button for running the function, run example, which is in the JavaScript file. And then finally, we have this div so that we can display the results. So we have a div called predictions. Let's call it maybe just predictions. And once the model returns a value, we're going to display it here. We're going to send it to predictions, basically. Okay. All right. So I think it's kind of good. Now what we have to do is the variables need to go here. So currently, I'm just, it's a good idea to put in the actual names, right? If you want to think of it that way. For now, I'm just going to do like generic names. So I'm just going to say like X1. X2. X3. X4. X5. And X6. But we have 11 inputs, so we need to add 5 more. Okay, so this is going to be X7, X8, X9, X10, X11. Now, the default values, I recommend leaving default values because it's really nice. You just press run and then you get the results. It's kind of nice, but you can also modify them. This, of course, should be consistent with the variable. So you want to say probably box 0, box 1, box 2, box 3, box 4. Now, actually, to be more consistent, maybe just do box 1, because it doesn't really matter. Everyone with me, guys? Making sense? All right, so that's the text, the 11 text boxes. Now let's check the button. So I just have a background color. I called it run, and on click you call run example. Run example function is the async function in the .js file that we still need to define. And then here, this div is called inference. And basically we can call this div predictions, and then we're going to send our result to this div basically on display. All right. So that should be it. So let's click commit. All right. To make things easy, what I like to do usually at this point is in the README, I create the link. So that way I can just click on it and forget of what it is. So you're going to go. So you have to understand how GitHub gives you a URL for your GitHub pages websites, basically, right? So here we're going to say, I'm just going to say link, right? And then usually it's your username. So it should be your username. So it should be, I'm going to have to use my username here for this to work. So it would be something like HTTPS. Right? And then my username is Calix1. So here you guys have to use your own GitHub username. Then it should be github.io. And then it's going to be the path where this is located. So in this case, for me, it's PyTorch, right? PyTorch, the repo name. Deploy to production. Wine quality. Wine quality / NN. And then it should be so I guess if you just do it like that, and there's a default index in there, it'll just retrieve that one. Okay. You can probably put in index.html and that will also work. Okay. Got it? Any questions? All right. So I'm going to hit commit. All right. There it is. So now we are trying to access NNN index HTML. As you know, with HTML, this page should already show text boxes, a button, and nothing for the div because it's empty, but it's an HTML page, right? So we don't need to link it to ONNX for it to display. So I'm going to click on this, and it says 404. There isn't a GitHub pages site here. So what you should all get this. It means that we haven't configured pages on this repo. Got it? So now that's the part that we have to do, okay? So you may already know how to do this. So I believe there is a settings here. So you have to be in the repo. So I'm going to go to deploy to production, click on settings. And then down here, do you guys see that there's a thing called pages? Do you guys have this? I don't have a special account, so you should also have it, right? Yeah. All right, so click on pages. Okay. And then here then, deploy from branch. So let's click on this. Yeah. So deploy from branch. And then here where it says none, you should say main. Okay. You guys see that? And then you can click save. Okay. So as you can see, GitHub Pages is designed to host your personal organization and project pages from a GitHub repository. Okay. So here it says it's going to enforce HTTPS. I believe it's doing it. If you had your own custom domain, you can set it up here, but you don't need to do that, right? So that should be it. Did you guys do this? It might take a while, and that should be the whole process, I believe. But it takes a while to set up. Well, there it is. Okay. So now you can see it's changed, right? So now it says your site is live at HTTPS Calix1, GitHub, PyTorch, and so on, right? So that means that we've configured GitHub pages so that we may make available any websites that you want, even as I said, with your own domain. And it's free. And it's GitHub, so it's actually very efficient. All right, so now, like I said, there is a 10-minute delay. So we can go back to PyTorch, okay? Back to deploy to production, wine quality, NN. And now you can see it's very convenient to have the link there because that's the thing you're going to press. And hopefully you will start seeing the website eventually. Oh, there it is. So mine is working already. I don't know if for you guys it's working already, but that's it. You just deployed to GitHub. So that's GitHub pages. So that there's nothing more really. That completes kind of that part. And as you can see, we have our model here. We've got our 11 inputs for the wine quality data. Let's say that you wanted to, that's 34 for whatever reason. And then this is, I don't know, 56, the values. So you would enter them here. And now you would press run, but our run invokes the function, but there's nothing in it yet. So I click on run, nothing happens. So now what needs to happen is when you click run, it goes to the function, runs it, and then that function runs the ONNX model, gives the prediction, and it's going to write it out here to where it says inference. Okay, that div, basically. Is this clear enough? All right, so let's, we have about 10 minutes, so we can keep going. Okay, so basically the index page should be done, except for whatever, additional like code, improvements you want to make, but the basic functionality should be there. 11 inputs, trigger the action, run the model, and predict the value. So now we need to go back to our code. Let's go back to pages. We can go back to the main repo, click PyTorch, click deploy to production, wine quality, and now we're going to focus on index.js which is whenever we press the button, it comes here, right? So now remember, in index.html, we already invoked the library, right, for ONNX.js. And so those functions are now available to us, okay? And so now that's what we're going to do over here. We're going to do the basic code to produce our prediction, okay? So let's get started with that. So let's click on this one, the pencil. We called our example run example, basically our function. So in here then, the first thing we're going to do is declare a variable. So I'm going to do var x equal new float 32 array. And we're going to define 1, 11. This is the input variable, right, that we're going to need to collect from the text boxes. Okay. So we need to now get the data. Now, oops, sorry. Okay. All right, so we need to get the variables. So we can use document dot get element by ID. And we called our boxes box. And then I think it was like 1, right? So you get that text box. Once you grab that text box, you grab the value from it, semicolon. Okay. And then you're going to assign this to X basically. So we can say X 0. Okay. And now we're going to proceed to repeat this process for all 11 text boxes. That's 8. 3 more. Now that's 1. Oh, did we start? Yeah, here we have to start at 0, right? 2, 3, 4, 5. Got it? Everyone with me? So we're just collecting the data. This would be then box 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I think this is why I had done it starting at 0 in the previous, because so they would align. But anyway, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. All right. So that is basically a JavaScript element. Now we need to convert this element into an ONNX tensor, okay? So that we can actually then feed that in the proper format into the ONNX model. So that's going to be let tensor x is going to be equal to new ONNX dot tensor, which is x comma float 32 and the dimension 1 comma 11. Does this make sense, guys? Remember, what we're doing is like we went from text boxes to JavaScript, and now we need to go to ONNX tensors so that they're in the appropriate format so that they can fit into the ONNX model. Got it? Oh yeah, I'm sorry. Yep. And that's so it's 7:46. So I guess we're gonna have to stop here for today, but we're almost at the end, right? We're gonna finish this one up next week. Okay. You know, you can try it on your own, maybe if you're curious. You know, go online and finish it up if you'd like, and you know, but otherwise we will finish it up on Tuesday, this one, and then we'll deploy the XGBoost model, which will be deployed through ONNX, but ONNX runtime. So a slightly different version. So you'll see both. And then in the end, hopefully we'll have 2 models that run. And that's, you know, that would be it. And then we'll finish up the regression as well. And that should conclude this sequence of topics, and we'll move on to classification. Okay. All right. So I will stop the recording now, and we will finish this in the next lecture, ONNX 2 or something.